So I want to thank you all for coming today. I know you're very busy, especially this time of year. But I want you to do yourselves a favor if you can. During this session, I want you to try and shut everything out. That means the emails, the voicemails, any kind of text might be coming through, whatever you have going on. And it's not because I'm going to say something earth-shattering that's going to change your life. Hopefully I do. Because I want you to think about your business. I want you to think about how you're doing things in your business. And what that means is walking through your processes. Again, like I said, I do consulting work, and I was at a customer a while back, and when I arrive on site, what I usually like to do is to sit down with everyone in the group, like to take a tour of the facility, and essentially get the lay of the land, get the lay of how the parties work, get the lay of the personality. So as part of that, I will sit down and ask questions of the parties, and during this session, it popped up about Sherry, who was the bookkeeper there, was going through the invoicing process. Their invoicing process required it to run through 5 to 6 parties, as I recall, at this point in time. So I asked a question. I'm thinking, boy, this must really be a real technical way of doing your billing on there. So I asked Sherry the question, well, why is it? Why do you do it that way? And you walk through, why does Joe need to look at the invoice? Why does Ken need to look at the invoice? And for a lot of situations, it was simply because they've always done it that way. Joe and Ken never even looked at it. They sat in their desk, maybe just glanced at it and passed it on to the next party. All its purpose was to slow down the billing process. So that's what I want you to think about in your business, because what can happen to you a lot of times is that you get store blind. So part of my life has been in the retail world, and an old expression we had there is that you get store blind. And you walk by a certain display in a store, you look at a dirt spot on the floor, you walk by it so many times that you stop paying attention to it. Has that happened to you in your business? And I hope it hasn't, but if it has, so now might be a good time to step back, take a look, and think about the processes that you're doing as I'm going through the presentation, and see how you handle that in your business. Now, part of the description for this webinar was regarding cost cutting. Now, cost cutting does not just mean reducing your workers' comp costs. Great thing if you can do it. Wonderful. It also means squeezing out inefficiencies in your business. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Most of the parties in this session, I believe, are CFOs, or at least in the accounting world, or at least the accounting area of your company. What's the view that most people in the companies have, and even the outside world have, of a CFO? A lot of times they're considered cookie cutter people. They are cost cutters. So you're going to cookie cutter, meaning that you can just replace one for the other. All of them are the same in how they do their business. But that's not really the case, is it? We do a lot more than that. We listen, we observe, we question, we overview. In my experience, the CFO probably has the most knowledge of business of anyone in the organization. That includes the owner, because in most situations, the CFO has been around, has worked in other industries. Maybe they worked in public accounting, got a good experience of business that way, or maybe they just worked in other businesses as a CFO and learned a lot of different functions and about different types of business than with anyone else. Some companies may just be a technician. That's all they've ever done is service business telephone systems, say. CFO usually is not the case. Now, what is our view of the others in the company? Sometimes, particularly the sales guys or maybe the service guys, the CFO a lot of times wants nothing to do with other areas of the company. Or I'll say a bad CFO wants nothing to do with other areas of the company. But we have to realize that the impact of these other departments impacts ours. So we need to have visibility into the sales and the service process, and that's part of what we're here talking about today. So if you're going to get in the mindset where you're just going to be worrying about your general ledger, you're going to fail as a CFO, you're going to fail your organization, because you need to be more than that. You really need to be the one in the company who is the agent of change, because, again, you're going to know the areas a little better than anyone else. You're going to be able to have visibility into service, have visibility into sales, have visibility in the general ledger of how everything is impacted. The other parties very likely are not going to have that. So you need to be that agent of change in your organization. But again, let's not get carried away with ourselves. We're not supermen or superwomen. We still need to rely on those around us who are experts. We're not, maybe you are, maybe you can install the equipment or service the equipment that your company works on, but you need to rely on those parties, need to rely on their knowledge, but it is a collaborative effort. Now, like I said, I do a lot of consulting work, so a lot of times that requires some time behind the wheel. And the one thing that I will run across when I'm driving is that you get to that point where you can only listen to so much talk radio. You can only listen to so much music. You can maybe put an audio book in for a while, but ultimately you end up with some silence. And I was on a long drive a couple months back, and for whatever reasons, got to that point where you're thinking, and started thinking about my dad. Now, my dad passed away about 10 years ago, and he was a time study engineer, the time and motion study engineer. So a lot of times he loved to grill. He had 7 sons, so he spent a lot of time grilling. So he had a lot of time to talk. And what he used to do a lot of times, he would talk about his projects. And as a time and motion study engineer, he worked a lot in the manufacturing arena. So I was thinking about my dad, and that kind of got me thinking a little bit about the manufacturing world while I was driving. Now, the manufacturing world, we all have to realize we all manufacture in one way or another, don't we? Whether we are building a product or whether we are manufacturing a service to help service a customer. We're a nation and a world of manufacturers, and manufacturing itself has evolved in similar ways as the service arena does. So manufacturing, you input materials. They're assembled. You output that product, and you satisfy the customer. Very basic overview of the manufacturing process, but as part of that process, you want to make it as quick and as speedy as possible. You want to minimize the waste and the loss of materials. We've all, if we're in accounting, we've all probably taken cost accounting in college, so we spend a lot of time calculating lost materials. So we want to minimize that on the service arena. We want to minimize that in the manufacturing arena as well, of course. That's where it starts from. Now, how did manufacturing start out? So what we're going to try to talk about is some of the parallels between manufacturing and service. Manufacturing started out with small crafts of making product. The system worked great, but the capacity was very limited. How much different is that than a manual system of tracking leads, tracking service calls? Maybe you're very hopefully automated on the accounting end. You're hoping that back on the safeguard sheets and a manual general ledger. I don't think too many companies are doing that these days, but I still run across them every now and again. But the rest of the areas are in your organization. How manual is your process? Now, that process worked great. It's been around for a while, but again, you are limiting your capacity. You're waiting for tickets to come in from the field. You're waiting for leads to be entered into the accounting system for an invoice. Greatly slows your ability to grow as an enterprise. What popped up sometime around the 1800s and 1900s, Eli Whitney contributed the interchangeable parts to the world. So that greatly enhanced productivity, but a better way was still needed. Just like a disparate system is more evolved than a manual system in the service world, still a better way is needed. Yeah, a disparate system is going to be having a separate system for tracking tickets, for inventory, and we're going to talk about that as we move through. In the manufacturing world, sometime around 1910, Henry Ford and Charles Sorensen introduced the modern assembly line to the world. And what the effect of that was, this is their picture of their Highland Park factory, that reduced the chassis assembly of the Model T from 12 hours to less than 3. So that was their answer to productivity. And big fan of Henry Ford, based on obviously from my father's passing down knowledge of manufacturing. Quote from Henry Ford is, "Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success." Think of that in your business and how you are running things right now for the process coming of a lead coming in the door or a suspect coming in the door all the way down to your invoice. Are you folks working together? Another quick quote from Ford here. This is a principle of assembly. "Place the tools and men in the sequence of the operation so that each component part shall travel the least possible distance while in the process of finishing." Apply that to your world. Are you doing things in the most efficient manner possible? So here's a quick view of our assembly line. So that was the solution of the manufacturing world. So the world of services obviously came up with their solution, quite honestly, a little later than the assembly line, because we had to wait for the advent of computers and the information age to develop further. But the answer for the manufacturing or the service world to respond to manufacturing, so to speak, or have a parallel development, was the PSA. Now I'm going to kind of view the PSA in the line of Ford's assembly line. And I'm going to pick up on here. So what do we do in our business? We ignite interest by marketing. We engage during the selling process, and we quote the customers. We accept the signed quote. We fulfill and install that quote, that product that was ordered on the quote. We earn through our invoicing, and we produce by providing good service to our customers as they remain one of our customers, hopefully. All in one straight line nothing is lost. That's what the idea of the modern PSA. Now, you hear me referring to PSA. PSA refers to Professional Services Automation. Now, there's a lot of acronyms that pop up in the world, invented by more clever marketing guys. I'm an accountant. I'm not a clever marketing guy. So, if you're not familiar with that term, don't feel bad, because there's so many acronyms out there that stand for a lot of times the same things. 10 years now, that could stand for RTS. Really terrific stuff. One of the fun things I like to do sometimes in a meeting where you get a lot of parties spouting acronyms is to come up and, make up your own acronym. Just throw some kind of a silly, YSN. Have you checked your YSN report lately? And usually when you're in those meetings for people who like to spout acronyms, they're too afraid to admit to you that they don't know what the YSN means. So now you can make sure you have some kind of a meaning for them, or you can let them know that it really means you speak nonsense. So now you can see how easily we've gone a little bit far afield here. I'm talking about acronyms. So you can see we want to maintain things in one straight line. Okay. So let's go back one more look here, since I moved off the straight line there for a minute. So again, as a reminder, we want to ignite interest by marketing, engage during the selling process. We accept a signed quote, we fulfill by installing, we earn through invoicing, and we procure by providing good ongoing service to the customer. Now, we're going to be spending more time talking today about a little bit on the acceptance end of things, earning, and fulfilling. We're not going to spend too much time about engaging or igniting interest. That's to be time more for the marketing ends. But again, I can certainly talk about it if someone has some questions. Now, again, I want to illustrate the point of the straight line approach through an example that I ran into, because not all parties agree with this approach. Again, I teach at user conferences at times and different webinars and do consulting. So I met a fellow at a user conference a while back, and his name was John. John used a manual system, and for him, it was the way to go. He'd run his business, been in business, gosh, about 30 years, okay? So his system was the old pre-numbered service order, Outlook for contacts, QuickBooks, and said he had no inventory, but it came out that he actually did have some inventory. So I went and proceeded and asked John some questions. First question I started out with is, John, have you ever lost any paperwork? Now, John said he never lost a form in his life for his customers or for any service that was done. Obviously, a little skeptical of that. I remember doing some work in the auto arena years ago, and aside from just someone losing a form, in this situation, had a service technician. Again, they were using pre-numbered forms. This is about almost 30 years ago at this point in time. And this rental company that I was doing some accounting work for, actually doing an audit for, uncovered that someone who was behind the rental counter they were using the pre-numbered forms. Great, we're doing our number checking. This fella had gone through and had a printer print up a replica form without the numbers. So he was getting the customer to sign off on rental agreements, no number, no trace, and essentially causing fraud in the organization. Okay, so again, the paper form is not certainly the best way to go. So here's an example of a report from Tigerpaw, just as it was said in the webinar, that this is not designed to be a product demo, but this is one form you can very quickly look at, is to take a look at your open service tickets. And this can be done a whole bunch of different ways in the product. Again, it's not a demo, so I'm not going to show you those, but it is something that would be important for you to be able to run this report. John, in his business, couldn't run that. Had no one dispatching calls. He was just handing paper tickets out. Had no visibility as to what the open tickets were for his business. Okay, next question I asked John is, do you, so I would make sure I'm running a little audio problem again. Does your time paid match time worked in your business? Now, maybe John can track that, but it's very possible that his work is going to be very laborious, very slow. Because how would you go back and track the time for each ticket? Each ticket, add the hours up, now manually pull out a timesheet. With Tigerpaw, I can run this report, compare the time logs to the service tickets, and see exactly what was being worked on at that point in time. Moreover, the time actually is entered on the service ticket that you're going to be billing. So that would be a hallmark of any PSA system we want to be looking at. Billable time logs not converted. Now, this again something John could not see in his business. He cannot check to see which of his time that's been entered has not been billed yet. This is going to give you the ability to do so. Essentially kind of building a work in process, right? Estimated hours versus actual hours on all of your work. John could never tell that. I mean, it would be a huge process for John to go back and try and figure out in his business how many hours was his job estimated at. One, probably didn't know. Two, it would be a incredible lift of time, probably wouldn't even be worth the cost-benefit analysis to go back and do that because he'd be spending so many hours to try and calculate that. Credit hold. How many times has a customer tried to service or get service in your business and they're on credit hold? Can you track that in your business? John couldn't. He would lose money by going out and servicing a customer who hadn't paid the bill. You got someone who would call in after hours. That party would owe money. Technician went out in service, and now you just added insult to injury because that customer has not paid you yet again for the work that you've done. So Tigerpaw is going to give you a listing of all of accounts on credit hold. And any good PSA system should give you the ability to look at that. Moreover, Tigerpaw is going to give you the ability to put a customer on credit hold and stop them in their tracks. With security rights, you can block them from having that ticket even be entered into the system. Contract profitability. If you're offering maintenance contracts, manual system, imagine trying to figure out what the profitability on your contracts is. I asked John what the profitability was on his contracts. You know, it's like pulling out the old magic 8-ball for him. He has no clue. Whatever he made up, it was just going to be a made-up number if someone were to ask him. Contract profitability reports will be something that will be resident in any good PSA system, as well as the earned and unearned revenue on any contracts that you might offer in your business. Can you look at that in your companies right now and get an idea of how much contract revenue you have as earned or unearned? Now, if you have a 12-month contract, most parties would tell you that you should be recognizing that ratably each month over the life of the contract, not recognizing all as revenue in that month that you build it, because you have the matching process, obviously, right, that we all learned in school. Make sure you're matching your revenue to your expenses. Now, John, as we popped up in our discussions, popped up that he wanted to sell his business at some point in time. Now, at a minimum, what is someone going to ask you for when you go to sell a business? This is exclusive of the tax returns, anything else you'll be asking for a financial perspective. At a minimum, you want to have an active customer list. Remember to track your accounts under contract, contract profitability, as we discussed previously, technician utilization, inventory detail. That buyer wants to get as much of a look into your business as possible. Now, can you give them that look into your business in a manual system? Can you give it to them in the system you folks are currently using right now? I hope so. And what you're doing, John, in his business, clearly could not. So him selling the business is going to be a very difficult process. Met another fella at a webinar, or actually a seminar I was teaching. His name was Danny. And Danny ran his business with the classic disparate system. Okay, so he was utilizing a separate piece of software for each critical piece of his business. His model looks something very similar to that. He had an inventory package, separate. He could track his leads. So he was doing a pretty good job in that. He was tracking things, tracking agreements, employee time, quotes, service, purchasing, accounting. But what was missing here? No connectivity between any of the parties. Nothing talked to any other area of the company. Now, for Danny, that was the way to go. And his philosophy, he said to me, he said, Chris, he said, I want each product to do what it does best. I'm not going to find any product that's going to do everything best. And maybe there's some truth to that. But I don't agree with the process that he takes. And I'm going to tell you a story. I spent some time in retail, and when I was 15, 16 years old, worked in a supermarket, a kind of chain back here in Philadelphia, and was working one night on the night shift, and morning manager came in and was kind of yelling at the night shift guy. He says, stop doing Stephen Gerrard work. Now, I'm thinking as a young kid, I don't know what Stephen Gerrard is, who Stephen Gerrard was. It's an expression back here back east, kind of actually it's a rare expression to begin with at this point in time. But Stephen Gerrard was a financier and philanthropist in the Philadelphia area. You've heard of Gerrard Bank probably and Gerrard College. During an economic downturn, Stephen paid citizens to move rocks from one end of the lot to another. His belief was that no good came from idle hands. Certainly a very true statement. So the definition of Stephen Gerrard work is a task or occupation comprised of, essentially make busy work. Are you doing make busy work in your organization? Busy does not mean productive. Classic example of this, I was doing an implementation for a Tigerpaw customer. They were switching from another system, again, classically a disparate system. And this was exactly what their setup was. They had colored file folders for everything they did in their organization. Everything represented, red folders may have been quotes, green might have been job specs or purchase for the jobs, timesheets for a job or billing for a job. It looked like a rainbow. So we took all of that and combined it, again, utilizing Tigerpaw, into one system. All those folders, all that time was eliminated. Are you spending time in your business just shuffling folders back and forth from one system to another? Or are you doing Stephen Gerrard work where you're keying a customer in from one database to another database simply because you're afraid of having a sales guy in your database or a service guy in your database? So I'm going to ask some questions of Danny, and I'm going to ask these of you as well. So I want you to kind of think of these things as you're analyzing your processes, analyzing your business, as we talked in the beginning. Are all the transactions, if you're using a disparate system, being recorded? Are your transactions from your inventory system flowing into the accounting system? Is a prospect flowing through your business from the suspect to the prospect and now rolling into the accounting system? You give something too many ways to go, my experience is it's going to end up going the wrong way. Everything is not going to lead to its proper endpoint. Now, here's our service life cycle. We have a prospect, quote, service order, invoice, and we start that process over again. Looks very familiar, doesn't it? Very similar to the model we showed you on manufacturing. We want to have nothing lost in the process. We don't want that prospect lost. We don't want the information on the quote lost we never built. We don't want the service order time lost. A PSA means data flow. Everything flows from one to the other, prospect to customer, customer to quote, quote to service order to invoice. Everything is in one spot. And think of yourself, doing a collection call for someone, and now you have the visibility as to what might be happening now in sales and marketing. You're haranguing a customer maybe for $100. Maybe there's a $100,000 quote out there for that customer. Is that $100 going to be worth potentially jeopardizing a $100,000 quote? You can work that out during the sales process, small amount of money. Collection calls that you folks may make. Now your sales department now has visibility. Your service department has visibility. Every time we go out and service this customer, it takes 5 calls from the accounting department to go ahead and get paid. Is it worth continuing servicing this customer? Should that customer maybe be charged a higher rate because of what is going on in their business, because of the way they pay their bills? Okay. Let's check to make sure anyone had their hands up on questions. Another way of viewing this, in a timeline approach. Again, we want to take that straight line approach. We want to take it from a suspect, and that suspect's going to be a leads that you could grab from a list, a web hit, a trade show, or any source, moving them into a prospect, right? Now we qualify that prospect. We have a quote based on a needs analysis of that customer. We do a service call for that customer. We install that product, provide the service. We invoice, we collect. One smooth, straight line. Nothing is lost in the process. Can you do that in your business, or are you spending time keying information back? We talked about controlling cost. Controlling cost also is the cost of your billing. How long does it take you to do your billing? Can you accelerate your earnings process with the procedures you're using right now? Do you have any kind of a mobile solution? Do you have the ability for a technician to have a ability to check a service list of calls that they have, to close those tickets, to enter the parts used, to enter their hours worked, get a signature from the customer? That signature is now in your PSA. You generate the invoice, now over to the accounting. How long is it taking you to do your billing right now? Is it passing through 5 parties' hands? Is someone having to query another system to see what's going on in it? If you're even doing that, if you didn't have the rights to get into that system, a lot of times the accounting department doesn't have the rights to get into the other service system. They got to go walk and ask someone, so now you're wasting 2 parties' times. Have your service orders been billed and paid? How quickly can you tell in your system right now? This again, not a product demo, but I want to show you some reports of what you'd be looking at. This is a breakout of service orders that are not completely invoiced. So we have a breakout of the account name, address, and a breakout of essentially your work in process. This is the uninvoiced amount that your company has out on the street potentially that maybe should have been billed. You don't need to run a report. I can also check within the body of Tigerpaw to see whether a ticket has been fully invoiced or has it been not invoiced yet. So visibility is the case, not a question of always wanting to run a report. The reports in Tigerpaw can also be delivered out to you automatically as well on a schedule basis, on a subscribe basis with an add-on that exists for the product. Again, another way of viewing in the system whether an invoice has been paid. I can bring up a list of invoices right from the service order view to see whether I have been paid by my customer. Aging of service orders. Remember, as a CFO, you need to not just know what has been billed, you need to know what hasn't been billed, and also see if any revenue has been trapped through inefficient service. Look at this here, what we have in this business. We have a large number of tickets over 14 days. Huge number. Now, maybe that's true. Inside Tigerpaw, there's list views that look even beyond 14 days. You can see the full aging. So now you potentially have revenue that is trapped through bad service. Maybe it's not bad service. Maybe someone just forgot to close a ticket. If your system is not connected, how are you going to have the visibility to know whether you have these old tickets out there? That's revenue that you have lost. And imagine if that ticket had been closed 3 months ago, now trying to go bill that customer for work that had gotten done in December of 2014. Now you're going to generate an invoice 3 months later. They may forget they even called you at that point in time. How foolish are you going to look? And my view is if we deal with service companies, people will come work on equipment at our company. I've always gotten a bad feeling about a company whose billing was screwed up. To me, if their billing screwed up, I start worrying about their service as well. Because if you're running one side of your company poorly, I got to believe you're running the other side of your business poorly as well. Maybe it's just me based on the experience I've had over the years, but it gives you a little bit of a bias towards organizations that are not efficient in their operations. Managed services. Are any of you doing managed services in your businesses right now? We all here to talk about it. We all hear about Convergence in our businesses. If you are doing it in your business right now, how are you handling it? Give a little thought right now to the process that's going down right now in your business. Do you know how many assets are being managed at a customer site? Do you have a procedure to intake those assets? Is someone verifying the billing that's being done? Do you know how many accounts are under agreements right now with your company? Think about how, if someone were to ask you that today, how would you do that? Would you have to go, ask the service department to find that out, or could you run a report yourself? Could you get an ID to make sure that everyone who should be billed is billed? Are you pulling assets to generate your billing? Again, you're a CFO. That's not your job to be pulling assets, but is it happening? How time-consuming is your billing? What's the cost of you forgetting to add a server to someone add, or a copy machine say to someone add, or a printer, or several of the above, or workstations someone may add to their business, and you forgot to bill them. Now you miss 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years. Had a customer that happened to it. He was before he came to Tigerpaw. He had missed billing assets for years. Think about all the lost revenue that is. Is your billing automated, or is it a manual process? Tigerpaw is going to allow for automated billing. How about payment? Are you chasing your customers down each month? Are you guys continuing to offer payment or service to customers who haven't paid their bills? Do you have to get on the phone and make collection calls for them? Tigerpaw has the ability for automated billing and payment. Inventory. Now, you may not have inventory in your business. You may not be able to walk back to your stock room and see, pallets of inventory sitting back there. Although I've had people tell me that they don't have any inventory on site. You walk through, their inventory room is looks like a football field. They have so much product sitting back there. They say we just buy your job. But are you controlling what you're buying for your jobs? Can you tell me what you bought for a job? John couldn't without pulling out a folder. Tony, who I went to, couldn't do that before he switched to Tigerpaw because he would have to pull out 15 different manila folders, different colored folders, so it might make it easier to find which folder he was looking for. We'd have to go pull and add up, take an adding machine tape, and add all those up. This is a report from Tigerpaw. It's the purchase order detail for a service order. So you can very quickly tell what was bought for a particular service order because all the purchasing happens through the service order. Again, it rolls from the suspect to the prospect to the quote to the service order. Purchase orders can be generated off of that service order. One straight line movement. Easy trekking back and forth. And again, you also don't need to run a report for this either. It is visible inside the service order. So I can find out what PO something was ordered on and whether or not it has been received. Think about the time you're saving of having to send an email out to your purchasing department and saying, hey, have we received all the product for this job yet? How much time does that cost back and forth? Someone having for us to get out of their chair and walk, and then they're talking about the football game yesterday or who got signed in free agency. Time adds up. Well, the old expression, time money, is a very true one. The age of inventory. Is your inventory worth what you think it is? We all try to take a balance sheet approach, as CFOs to looking at our business, making sure the balance sheet is correct. Inventory is a huge piece of your balance sheet in most of our cases. Is it worth what you think it is? Are you able to check with the system you have right now very easily, what's the age of your inventory? Or do you have to rely on the inventory manager, essentially allowing the person you are policing to police themselves? Or can you run a report in your system to track what the mix of your inventory is? Here's a report from Tigerpaw. It's actually a custom report. It's called the Reserved Inventory Allocation. So let's take a look at the inventory that's on hand, how much has been reserved allocated to jobs. So here we have 2% of our inventory is allocated to a job. Why do we even have it? Why is it in there? Here we got 100% allocation. That's what obviously is what we want to see. That's the ideal. You're looking down at something that's below 75%, 80%. Why do you have that product? Do you have a job that's upcoming? You have the tools now to at least ask the question. Inventory turnover report. Can you view inventory turns? Or how many days sales and inventory do you have for your products right now? Are you holding too much inventory? What's that going to do to your cash flow? I don't have to tell you folks, you're all accountants, so I don't need to tell you what the benefit is of being able to do something along these lines. Inventory valuation report. How quickly can you get a valuation on your inventory? Inventory count. What do you need to do as far as your inventory count? Now, Tigerpaw does not allow for negative inventory like certain systems will allow for. So we certainly don't want to have anything along those lines. The bad month. We all have them in our organizations. Does that lead to finger pointing in your business? And when it does lead to the finger pointing, how do you resolve it? Are your financial statements now, so now we're really falling into your wheelhouse, are your financial statements set up for you to very easily tell what caused that bad month in your business? Who has to figure it out? You. Can you figure it out? How are your financial statements structured? Does your current system allow you to break your work out departmentally? Now, this is a view from QuickBooks. Tigerpaw has a seamless integration in with QuickBooks, utilizing their SDK, so it's error checking, the whole deal. Tigerpaw plays very well with classes in QuickBooks. So now we've mentioned Convergence, got audiovisual, technology, telephony. We've got a subclass for Yardley, and we have some kind of non-classified class out there. But we're also breaking our work out by installs versus a move, add, and a change versus some other kind of sales of equipment. Our labor is broken up between cabling, install, and Mac. So you're getting a complete view of your business. So I now take on this AV line of work because everyone says I should have audiovisual in my business. Wow, I made $422 last year on that. Wasn't really such a big deal, was it? Telephony is still my bread and butter. Maybe it's going to maintain that way always for me. Maybe I should start thinking about building partnerships instead of trying to take all of these parties on in my business. If your books and records can't tell you that right now, you're doing yourself a disservice. What do we always preach? That financial statements should be able to give us the ability to make good decisions on our business. If we can't make good decisions on our business, what's going to happen to us? We're going to end up going out of business down the line because we're not going to have the visibility that we need. Does the current system that you're using right now give you the visibility financially? Does it give you the visibility into verifying your financial statements that we saw previously, with your inventory, with the amount of time that is being spent? It needs to. Because if you don't, you're going to be paying a very heavy price. Your employee time, is it correct? All right, so we'll say we're John and we have no inventory in your business, or we'll say we're most of the parties out there these days who say, I only buy inventory for specific jobs. Is the time you're relying on correct in your business? Do you have an approval process? Or are you like John, who has a manual timesheet, and you're keying that in, so you're paying your employees one number, you are billing your customers another number? Is that happening in your business? Are you approving your hours? Can you look at a service ticket inside your system and say, okay, these are the hours that were spent? Were they good hours? Were they bad hours? Can you negotiate back and forth with your tech as far as whether those hours were good or not? This is a view of Tigerpaw's timesheet and the ability to approve time. So once that's approved, that time can be billed and rolled forward. Or is there an integration with your timesheets right now? So your accounting system that you have in place, is it getting a feed from your software package, your PSA, your service package, from maybe not even your PSA, whatever you're doing, your database tracking service tickets, is it getting a feed from the time? Or again, is it what I said, is it going to be in a situation where you're billing one number, you're paying your technicians and your people another number? You could potentially be losing twice. You're paying your technician the wrong number of hours. You could never bill your customers for the labor that you have expended on their behalf. How are you running that? How are you determining work in process for this labor for what you need to bill? So a couple quick final thoughts here that we've gone through. I want to leave some time at the end here for some questions, and I want to leave some time for any other thoughts that you folks might have as well. So it's kind of a review where we've been in the process right now that we've talked about. Some parties I saw, they're checking the list as we went through, it came in a little late. So let's kind of review some things that you might have missed. How are you checking right now lost billing and paperwork of all your service orders? Servicing overdue customers. Are you checking that right now in your business? What are you doing to handle that? Contract profitability. Can you do that? Do you have automated billing and payment installed in your system, or are you spending a tremendous amount of time doing your billing? Tracking unearned contract revenue. Time approval and timesheet integration. How are you generating your payroll? How are you paying your technicians? How are you billing your customers? Do you have inventory control? Does your company have divisional reporting? If you missed some of these, it might be worth you looking into something that can solve these issues for you, because if you don't solve any of these key issues, you are going to be having some problems in your business. I pretty much guarantee that. So with that being said, I just want to have a quick reminder that you need connection. Everything needs to be connected in your business. Everything needs to be flowing in one straight line. Because if it's not flowing in one straight line, as we view right here, not igniting interest in our customers, that engagement, the acceptance of the order, the fulfillment, earning the revenue, and perduring that customer, what is going to happen to your business? You're going to lose a possible invoice, possible bill, and what is the cost of that happening in your business? One lost service ticket could be $5,000. One lost contract billing could be 10 grand, 20 grand. I could throw any kind of number out there, and you couldn't say I'd be wrong in that situation. So if you're not controlling that, I would really give some serious thought. Hopefully you've had the time to think about that during this and after the webinar. You can certainly go through that process in your head. I hope at least you're doing it every day if you're not.
If you have any additional questions after the webinar, go ahead and email Chris, Chris at tigertrack.net, or you can email me, Corey at tigerpaw.com. We'll also be sending out this webinar within 24 hours, and so you can watch it again or share it with any associates. Chris, I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Sure, thanks, Corey.
Always appreciate having you on to talk to our customers and prospects. Thanks for attending. Bye.
Thank you, folks.